Have you ever felt it? That strange moment when you suddenly become aware that something might be there, even though you cannot see it. Not a sound, not a shadow, just a presence. Maybe it happened late at night, maybe when you were alone in a quiet room. You looked around, nothing. So you told yourself it was nothing, because sometimes it feels easier to sweep things under the rug than to ask questions we were taught not to ask. But today, I want to explore those questions with you. Not in a frightening way, in a thoughtful way. Many of us grew up with ghosts being presented in a very specific way. Dark houses, strange noises, sudden shadows. Stories designed to frighten us. Movies that make ghosts seem terrifying. Books filled with haunted castles and restless spirits. From a very young age, we learn to associate ghosts with fear. But this raises an interesting question. Are we afraid of ghosts themselves? Or are we simply afraid of the unknown? Because fear often appears when we encounter something we cannot explain. And throughout human history, there have been many things we did not understand. Lightning once frightened people. Eclipses once terrified entire civilizations. But over time, knowledge replaced fear. Which leads us to another thought. Perhaps ghosts belong to that same category of mystery, something we do not fully understand yet. Now, when we begin to talk about ghosts, we sometimes hear people say that doing so is like opening a can of worms. In other words, once you begin the discussion, it leads to many complicated questions. And that is true. Some people strongly believe that ghosts exist. Others are convinced that every experience can be explained by psychology, imagination, or natural causes. But maybe the real mistake is believing that we must choose only one side. Because the truth is that human experiences are often more complicated than simple answers. And when we dismiss people too quickly, we may be missing the bigger picture. Across the world, millions of people have described experiences they could not easily explain. A voice when nobody was there. Footsteps in an empty hallway. A sudden feeling that someone was standing behind them. Sometimes, people even describe a touch, a movement, or a shadow that seemed real in the moment. Now, whether these experiences have natural explanations or something more mysterious behind them is still debated. But one thing is very important to remember.
I see you. You're real. This is really happening.
Experiencing something unusual does not mean someone is crazy. It simply means they experienced something they could not immediately explain. And that has happened to many people throughout history. Unfortunately, many people keep these experiences to themselves. They fear being laughed at. They fear being judged. So, instead of talking about what they felt or saw, they sweep the subject under the rug. But silence often makes fear stronger. When we keep our thoughts locked inside our minds, our imagination can grow far more frightening than reality. Talking about our experiences can have the opposite effect. When we share our thoughts, we often discover that others have felt similar things. And suddenly, the fear becomes smaller. Understanding grows, and acceptance begins to replace anxiety. Curiosity is one of humanity's greatest strengths. Every scientific discovery began with a question. Every exploration started with someone wondering, what might exist beyond what we already know. Ghosts may remain a mystery, or perhaps one day science will explain experiences that currently seem strange. Either way, we are probably still only scratching the surface of how the human mind perceives the world. And that is something worth exploring calmly, not fearing. So, if you have ever experienced something you could not explain, you are not alone. And you are not strange for wondering about it. Human curiosity is natural. It is how we learn. It is how we grow. And it is how we slowly replace fear with understanding. So, let me ask you something. Have you ever experienced a moment that made you stop and wonder? A sound, a feeling, or a presence that you could not easily explain? Maybe it was nothing. Or maybe it was simply a reminder that the world still contains mysteries. And sometimes, the best way to face those mysteries is simply to talk about them. Sweep something under the rug. To hide or ignore a problem instead of addressing it. Open a can of worms. To start a discussion that leads to many complicated questions. Missing the bigger picture. Focusing too much on small details and overlooking the larger truth. Scratching the surface. Only beginning to understand something. As a closing message to you, remember, the comments section is there for you. If you have ever experienced something you could not easily explain, you are welcome to share it there. Write about what you saw, what you heard, what you sensed, or even what you simply felt in that moment. Sometimes putting an experience into words helps us understand it more clearly. And when others read it, they may recognize something similar in their own lives. You may discover that many people have had moments that left them wondering. And as you read their thoughts, their encouragement, and their experiences, you may realize something very important. You are not alone. We are all human. We see, we hear, we feel, we sense, we believe.